So today I have the pleasure of having with my friend and colleague and inspiration, Ashley Koff, who's joining me today at A4M. And I am going to start out because Ashley is always doing a million amazing and important things and impactful. So I think before we even jump into anything genetics or 3x4 or what's happening here, is Ash, just tell us, what are you up to now? I know there is a book that you're writing because I don't get to see you so much because you're busy. And of course, the amazing work at BMP. So maybe just let us know a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, what's coming, when we're going to hear more about it. And then I will take the mic back and ask some more pointed questions.
Here. Hi, so good to see you. Thank you. So I'm actually super focused right now. I have a very specific mission, and that is to help people actually become healthy. And that means that we have to actually have the better support that we need. So it's not about more information. It's not about, is there a new type or a new way of eating or anything else like that. It's really about how do we figure out for you personally what your body needs to run better, and then how do we help support you so that you can make those choices? So my focus, my hyper focus there is actually giving you that support. So we bring that support through my company, as you mentioned, the Better Nutrition Program. And it's really led to me doing a book called The Better Shot. May not be called that, but I really believe everybody does deserve a better shot. Right, exactly. When it comes to, what all this stuff is out there and we're overwhelmed, we're frustrated. We have tried, we've invested so many resources in trying to get and stay healthy. And the better shot is about the fact that we actually have a very brilliant design inside of our body, but modern day puts us in a rock and a hard place all the time. So there are things that we have to do specifically for what I call your switch hormones, so the peptide hormones in your body. You may have heard about them because of the actual shot. So GLP-1, Ozempic, we hear about these agonists. And so we actually make these hormones in our body. And what they do is they switch on and off to provide signals for other things to happen. When those things aren't happening, we have to figure out why, and we have to help them function better. So that's what we're doing, and that's what my protocol is. And we're also training coaches and nutritionists to be able to offer this, because I'm just one person and I want to be able to share this information. But again, I want you to have the support to be able to do this. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm very excited about it.
So how far are we away about getting this better shot? We just kind of talking about the name. It may not be that. So just remember Ashley Koff. But when do you think we are going to be able to see this book? And then I want to talk a little bit more about this Ozempic thing for a second. So
Sure. So it is December of 2024 right now, right? So I'm delivering the book by January 6th of 2025, and the book is meant to be out here in January of 2026. So a year from now, and actually a little bit less than a year from now, this will be available. I do want to share with anyone watching right now, the protocol and the support for this are available. I have been doing this. I've been doing it from a research standpoint and also an implementation standpoint, and training practitioners for the last couple of years. So if this is resonating with you and you want it now, head to the Better Nutrition Program and we can help support you on that part. And then the book will be available with the first ever assessment for your switch hormones. So to actually be able to see, are they suboptimally functioning? And if they're suboptimal, what kind of suboptimization? Because that's going to tell us what you actually need to do to fix your switch.
I love that, because when I heard January 2026, I was like, everyone's going to be in horror going, I can't wait that long. I need to know this information now. But actually, I follow all your social media and Instagram. You're always doing videos. They're always educational, and they're always talking about this stuff. And Better Nutrition Program or BMP are already teaching and supporting this. So if this is something that you're feeling, I'm confused, there's got to be something better than just the shot. If you just follow Ashley or Better Nutrition Program, you're going to start getting this information before the beautiful book comes out. So I think that was really important. The second thing is, last night I had an interesting conversation with someone who works in those space, also trying to find out, how do we support the body to really manage these hormones that are so important without having to resort to the shot? Because we know that there are many challenges. If you take the shot, they lose the weight, they gain the weight, behavior doesn't change. Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Well, you can take that from me. But when the lifestyle changes, let me rephrase it. When we only do a shot and we don't change our diet and our lifestyle and our exercise and our behavior, we don't really solve the problem. So is that okay? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was just being a bit simple there. Um, but she was saying how pharmaceutical companies have taken out, like, this is her statistics, quote me, 239,000 doctors got taken out for lunch or dinner to sell them on a GLP-1 injection to sell their patients. Well, this is kind of terrible and kind of not so terrible, because what it has done is made us aware that there are these hormones in our body that, when they get switched on and get switched off, are going to impact the way we engage with appetite, with food, with our environment. And so actually, in some ways, they've raised the awareness for someone like you to step in and say, okay, now that you know this exists, let's talk about the other thing. And I want to make one other comment that she said, which I thought was really beautiful, is hunger isn't the enemy. You know, that hunger, and this is where I think you come from, is like, these things happen in our body and have always been happening. And we didn't have these shots come in and change everything about our physiology. So hunger is a normal and natural response to eating in our body and environment. And I love that, because I think we often have to get reminded about that. So before we talk about genetics, because I always want to talk about genetics, and you've been, working with 3X4 for a long time, I'm going to hand it back one more comment from you about anything I might have said that you want to say better than me, and just what is so exciting about the future that's coming about understanding this space better.
Well, and we will talk about genetics, because one of the really interesting things is that how we're genetically designed, the inefficiencies and the efficiencies, we need to actually play to our strengths in order to accomplish what it is that is going to help us get and stay healthy on that part. So it's a perfect part of this better shot discussion, right? Okay. So what we really want to think about, let's talk about doctors being presented with information from pharmaceutical companies. Doctors, if they weren't educated on something in school and they need to learn about it in a different way, dietitians, therapists, et cetera, somebody providing that information could be very helpful. If anyone takes information, including you, the consumer, takes information from someone and then just acts on that information and doesn't check out or ask, but why, but how, and who is this person in front of me, that's problematic. If you watch someone on social media and they say something about what worked for them and you go and you do it, that is as bad as a doctor being taken out by a pharmaceutical company and hearing about something and going and doing it. So we all need to be held accountable to taking in information and acting on information. We really have to look at, I refer to it as instead of experimenting. So experiments are what I do when I'm working with a patient. I want to understand what's going on for you in your body. And I'm not going to know that. I can give you a recommendation, but I'm not going to know that until I actually see what played out. Were you able to do it? Was it deliciously doable? And did it help you start pooping, or did it stop you further from pooping? Whatever the answer is on that part. So I think that's one side of it. The second thing that you said is, I think it's incredible. So the shot, there's something really fascinating about this. Okay, the shot was designed because there's a Gila monster. A Gila monster is living today, but it is a prehistoric animal. A prehistoric animal that, because in prehistoric times, couldn't find access to food, right? So it's designed for up to about 30 days to be able to get calories that are stored in its tail, right? So that means if something wasn't available, it can go back and it can get those calories. We are not designed like that. But when the scientists found out that still is alive today, and when they were able to extract that venom and then take away the stuff that was toxic to us, they were like, wow, this is really interesting. What if I could override your current system so that you literally didn't need to think about food or didn't need to take in food for 7 or 30 days? You might lose a bunch of weight, of course. And so that's what's happened, or it might improve your blood sugar, etc. So really interesting there. I think what's happened is there's been a miscommunication of what these tools actually are. And I really do think of them as tools. So Ozempic, the shot, GLP-1 agonists, you might hear it. There are dual agonists now. So GLP-1, GIP, there are triple agonists. There's going to be quintuple agonists. Like, we're just getting really excited about the idea of agonists, right? Which means overriding or stopping what is happening. So when you think about these medications, I think about them as hormone replacement therapy. I'll come to that in a second. You want to understand that they are coming in and they're saying what's happening in your body is not okay right now. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to override it. And oh, by the way, I'm going to I'm going to tell the body, you don't need to do this, right? You don't need to do that part. Well, we see that in a variety of places in medication. We see that in cholesterol. So, a statin medication, if you take it, it goes in, it stops your, interferes with your body producing cholesterol. Is that a benefit? It may be a benefit if you have a crowded highway and you have too much cholesterol, but also may not be a benefit if it also doesn't allow us to produce testosterone, or it doesn't allow us to produce coenzyme Q10, or if it says the absence of a crowded highway means that you are now heart healthy. None of those things are true. It also could be the case of if you take a proton pump inhibitor. Proton pump inhibitor says you have acid in your stomach, you have too much acid in your stomach, let me stop that production. So we stop that production, and what happens? Well, protein and fat need to get broken down and digested. They don't get digested when there's not enough stomach acid. So even though we've stopped the production of stomach acid, we now have created a problem because undigested food is going into the small intestine, and we have big problems there. And usually they're big and they're smelly and they're not better for us, right? On that part. So I could go on and on, because the way that medication works is I am going to override and often suppress. Smoking works the same way. I'm going to come into your body and say, I'm going to stimulate you and I'm going to override your body's motility. You know, when you stop smoking, you usually get constipated because the motility of the digestive tract is working. Okay, we understand that. Now, let's look at these in particular. They are hormone replacement therapy. What do we know about hormones? Insulin, testosterone, estrogen, thyroid stimulating hormone. If we are not producing enough of those, we need those, right? So taking them externally, like let's look at perimenopausal women. Now we're saying, isn't it a great idea for you to get estrogen because we see a tremendous decline in estrogen? Well, yes, but also no. So if we just give you that hormone and we don't deal with anything else that's there, right? If I just give you insulin and I don't tell you to maybe balance your nutrient intake, or I don't tell you to, if I give you insulin and I also don't tell you when to eat, you could actually go very low blood sugar, right? And that could be an issue. If I give you estrogen, but your detoxification system, phase 1 and phase 2 doesn't work very well, maybe one's slow and one's fast, suddenly you now have more of that hormone in your body and your body isn't able to eliminate it properly, right? It's not able to convert and eliminate it. So I've increased your risk of cancer. So maybe people that were put on hormone replacement therapy, their issue with getting cancer, their increased risk wasn't actually the actual estrogen, it was that we didn't optimize their detoxification system. So when I look at these medications, I say they could have a purpose. We could use hormone replacement therapy right now to help you actually address obesity, blood sugar, inflammation, cardiovascular concerns for a time period. But if we don't help you, the better shot, if we don't come in and we make sure that all the other stuff is working better, then we're going to have a problem. And if we don't recognize that when you come off of or you wean down on those medications, that the medication has been overriding your body's system in this time period, suppressing your production of these hormones, then you're going to be just without. You're going to be without the medication and you're going to be without your body's own formation on that part. So you're going to have a problem. Final piece on these medications, they don't just switch on. Your own hormones switch on for about 2 to 5 minutes. They switch on and stay on for 24/7, 24 hours, about 7 days of the week. That means that your body is sending metabolic signals in that entire timing. What's wrong there? When you are sleeping, you are getting messaging that your body is saying, hey, I'm getting food to eat. You should process that. Or, hey, I shouldn't feel full, or I should do this action, or I should do this action. So I'm seeing heart rate variability, impaired sleep in people who, by the way, already had impaired sleep. So they're going down, your body's less time in rest and digest, more time in fight or flight, and we're burning out insulin on that side because the body is saying, go, hey, insulin, go to work, go to work, go to work. So insulin resistance, insulin, all these challenges. So my point is, there's a better system approach to all of this. And the comment about whether or not we use an agent, whether it's a medication, whether it's a tool like a Amerisate, you know, the hops on that part, or whether we look at supplements and nutrients together that can optimize our function naturally, really depends on the degree of dysfunction that you're experiencing right now. And yeah, this is why I want to hand it over to you. It actually does depend on your genetics. And I think that's a really exciting place for us to be, especially when we're looking at using this in children, using this in pregnant women, and using this as an intervention multiple times in someone's life.
Well, that was amazing. And I learned a whole lot of stuff. And I thought I knew stuff. I have so much stuff to learn. And I'm really looking forward to more of the book. I really am, because I totally agree. And I think I always call, medications the sledgehammer as opposed to the modulator. And all the other things you spoke about is how do we modulate the system so it we have this harmony, an orchestra, and not the sledgehammer that comes in and knocks everything out. So excited about that. But let's talk about genetics. So, we always describe genetics as this. I describe genetics as what we try to do with 3x4 is we try to give insight into who you are and how your genes determine how you respond to the world around you. It could be to eating cues. It could be to a buffet. It could be exercise. It could be stress, trauma, food, supplements. All these things, genes are I would say, just think of the word responsiveness. And so this is no different, right? And I was absolutely amazed when I started learning about the genetics of weight and how our journeys are so different, right? I started off as a dietitian, same like you. And I was like, we're not gaining weight and losing weight in the same way, right? And we're not triggered in the same way. So appetite is not the same for everyone. Hunger's different. The way our genes impact our eating behavior. And yes, it's some of it determined by our social environment and the way we brought up, but so much of it is determined by genes. So if we can use genetics, and that's just one example, it's glucose, insulin, it's hormones, it's inflammation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we can use genetics alongside everything that you've spoken about to understand who you are, then when we're trying to figure out what this better shot is, we're taking into account who you are as your baseline inheritance, and then trying to personalize what is the best way to get you to optimize all these systems to set you up for success. And I know that you have worked a lot with 3x4 genetics, so I feel like you're very qualified to be able to. But in addition to what I've said, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, and genetics for me, well, personally for me, like it was just such an awakening, right? To be able to say like, oh, your body is uniquely designed. Look, I always knew that I could not eat what my friends ate and like manage my weight that way. I was a child of the 80s and like all the different diets, and my friends would be super successful in the diets, and like I might be momentarily successful. I mean, this is emotionally difficult to say, but like I had my first experience with eating disordered. I think everything was disordered eating, but where I really understood what eating disorders were in college, and I saw many of my friends have true eating disorders. I tried all of those behaviors and I was bad at them. I was a failure at them. I actually, in that time period, was more upset that I was a failure at it being an eating disorder person than I actually, like today, thank God, right? Like and realizing that. But so much of that is about the brain chemistry, and then it's also about the gut, right? But what we know is we have this vagus nerve that connects the two, right? Life is a highway, Tom Petty. It's like we're supposed to go from the gut to the brain very significantly, and then this like nice country road from the brain to the gut, and really like, explore that. And our colleague, Dr. Nawaz Habib, he's so brilliant, and he and I talk a lot about the fact that genetics help us really understand also how somebody as a whole person, where there may be challenges. And remember, those challenges can be things are working too well on that part. So I always thought that the fact that I ate anything and it stuck on me was a really big problem. And even I joking there, I remember when I first looked at my genetics, and this is after like decades of being a dietitian, and you had this, I love the pictures, right? We have these brilliant pictures, and my friend who's a mutual colleague of ours was looking, and she's like, ooh, I don't think I've ever seen that there's like not even like really a flame there, Ashley. Like you just like, and so in my head, I was like, oh, well, no wonder. Like I have no, and somebody might have said like, I have no metabolic burn, right? So for me, it was like really diving into, figuring out that like activity was so important to me, right? And then I remember you guys looking at my genes, you're like, you're a pro athlete. And so at 50, like I like unleashed this endurance pro athlete mentality. And it's like, it's the start of it. But what's really interesting about that was I was able to reframe my story and also look at the fact that my body is a survivor. Like I am designed like the Gila monster. So I am going to soar anything so that if a famine happens, if anything else happens. So what I have to do is I just have to play to my strengths. So what does that mean, right? When I give my body better quality amounts, when I do this, and like I can go hit it hard and I can show up and I don't have these other risk factors, I should be concerned. When I've had conversations like that with my patients, they feel empowered as opposed to feeling disempowered. And what's really interesting is it's not information that we're giving them. We're giving them insights about their design. Today, there are all these places. I mean, what Google has done has killed us with information overload, right? I always talk about infobesity, and we have so much information about like nutrition and what we should be doing and all this other stuff. Genetics give us insights and say like, hey, this is actually how you're designed. So when these things play out, that's for your consideration, right? And so I think with the genetics, one of the things that's really interesting is I do see that as it relates to weight health, I can look at leptin resistance and I can look at these other pieces and say, okay, that's a factor. But also, remember, we're talking about hormone therapy. So I can look at vitamin D. And if you are not metabolizing vitamin D very successfully, if you're not methylating very successfully, this is going to play out. And how I devise a better strategy for us to experiment with, like for us to figure out what's going to be doable, is inspired by insights about you specifically. So we just don't waste as much time. And I think one of the reasons that's so important is if we can reduce the amount of wasted resources. Time. Everybody thinks about money. I honestly, money, yes, and if you have it, like, okay, but a lot of people not even. Time and hope. I think like we're investing so much of that, and we're kind of out there like, ooh, maybe that, whatever. And it's like, no, when we have the genetic information, we're like, oh, that, like, let's try that. And let's figure out how we can, especially with something like detoxification, how we can slow one area down because we know the other area is just running slower. How can we speed up something and be more efficient? So, to me, it's like, it's kind of like having, we're in Vegas, so I can talk about it, like I think, and they're not listening to me, but like, it's kind of like having somebody counting cards behind you, so if you're playing, like, you're just going to win more often on that part. And I think like, we've just been missing that resource, and that set of tools. So the more that I can train practitioners to use this where they have where they have access to it, and now they have access to it, through your tools and resources. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. And I love the word insight because, it's my favorite one. And I think the one thing I also completely agree with, hope is a precious commodity. And when we play games with try this, it isn't a bottomless pit hope. We have to protect that of our patients. We have to protect it. Everyone has to protect it for themselves. Yeah. That we cannot just imagine we can try this and try that. And I agree with you. It's not about the money. It's about this is what I have the capacity to do. And if I squander that capacity, it's not bottomless. And and that's what we love about genetics, right? It gets us to the answer quicker, gets us to the right experiment as quick as possible to figure out what is the best thing. And you and I had a very similar childhood. You and I are going to survive on the plains of Africa. We talk about these evolutionary conserved pathways that enabled us to survive when we were living on the plains of Africa. And now when we're living in this modern, processed, hygienic, low infection environment, it's not working so great for us. And we need to think carefully about how we're going to build our worlds around us. I just wish I had the same sports genes as you, so I didn't win that. But you and I, we both like evolutionary survivors. And I think and when I saw my genes, when I talk about other genes, like I had such a sense of relief of being heard and understood and seen for the first time, because I was the one who failed on the million diets and felt like a failure. And it was only when I discovered the world of genetics, I was like, now I understand my journey and I understand my story. And now I can build something that succeeds for me, because otherwise we're just setting you up for failure. So Ash, thanks so much for joining me here today. I'm super excited for everything. I don't have to wait to January 26th to read the book. I'm hearing your conversations all the time. I will be getting the book. I will get a signed copy, telling you now. But mostly, like, this is the conversation that needs to be had. And if you're only learning about GLP-1 injections and you're not listening to Ashley and the conversation that we're having today, you need to go and check where you're getting your knowledge from. So once again, thank you so much for joining me.